place, it has to be a library. Someone has very rightly said this. And to celebrate the joy of reading, the joy of books, I, Janvi Sunaya from Vibes of India, I'm sitting with authors, book lovers and readers. To introduce you to our esteemed panelist, we have Esther David, who is an author herself. Then we have Arthur Duff, who is a professor at CEPT University. Up next, we have Shalvi Shah, who is an avid reader. Then we have Uma Oza, who teaches at Nirma University. And lastly, we have Umashankar Yadav, who organizes Ahmedabad Literature Festival. So we'll start the conversation around books and celebrate World Book Day.
When one is asked to pick out a favorite book, it's a very difficult challenge because one is obviously loves reading, loves connecting to other people through books, and how do you make a choice? So I was struggling with that for starters, and then what is appropriate, what is relevant. So perhaps some of you know, I'm sure many of you know, there's a wonderful writer who's no more called Bruce Chatwin. And he was a man who took himself all over the world and then brought that world back to us. So a very generous author in that sense, made incredible journeys, and I have always enjoyed his work, and then somehow one became intimately involved with those journeys. So he seems to have been a very interesting fellow, and of course there is the story of what an author writes, and then there's the story of the author. So they are quite different things. But what I often tried to do then, if I was having a journey, I would take one of his books. So maybe not to that place, but to understand the journey making through his eyes. And so there's a wonderful book called In Patagonia, which is a journey to the south of Chile, and the discovery he made of place and people and landscape. And he had this wonderful way of connecting with people and finding out the nature of how a place works through people. So I was on a journey as well in India, not as adventurous or far, but it just gave one then, clearly there's no question of relating landscapes or anything, but just an openness, a curiosity. And so it was a wonderful way of seeing a place, or the way you think about a place through his eyes. What was interesting subsequently was to learn a little about him, and he had a very strong Indian connection. And he in fact would make journeys and come back and sit in India to write.
So what was the biggest takeaway from the book?
Okay, the biggest takeaway. I think it was the way in which, and who knows how he managed it, but the way in which he connected with people. So and there were numerous people who had made Patagonia their home through different journeys or politics, whatever, that they found themselves there, and he finding them and retelling those stories. So how do you connect with a place, but ultimately through people? So of course it's a very dramatic landscape and it's quite extraordinary physically, but I think what I enjoyed most of him was his connection to people.
Very interesting. Up next, ma'am, would you want to share? I mean, being a reader, writer, being an artist, which is your...
I also have read Chapter. And I really enjoyed the way he writes about landscapes and the people and the connection between them. And how when you're traveling, it's not necessarily like huge mountains or monuments or things like that. It's also simple things.
It's an intimacy, actually. He brings.
And I think he also came to Ahmedabad.
That's a fun thing.
Yeah. His wife came very often to a friend's place in Ahmedabad. So that's how, and every time she came, then I was invited to meet her. So they would keep on talking about
Okay, that's interesting.
So that's how so you have a personal kind of connection.
Good.
Yeah, that's how. So, and I think his language also was very, it wasn't very difficult.
No.
It was very, the way, like traveling.
Yeah, it's clear.
The way you travel. It's like how you're going from one place to the other.
So expressing a lot in a very simple language.
His language was amazing. But
Okay.
the way he constructed it,
Okay.
you feel that it's moving on
Yeah.
through the journey. What do you say?
That's true, and it would be interesting. Again, it doesn't matter what he presents as the end product, but for any writer, well, and of course you will tell us about that, being so versed in writing, is the final product is the result of how many stages
Yes.
of development of. So it's printed, it's done, but
Right. Before that, there is the diary.
but how many? So what are the stages?
The
of-
notes, the diary,
Yeah.
the drafts.
Yeah,
And these are the people you meet and sometimes you photograph.
Okay, so
All that amounts
to a result.
to an end result. And then the cover.
Okay,
For me, the cover is always more.
Which is that one book for you, which is,
For me, actually, as you said, I would like to go a little backwards. Like that, I have grown up in the old city of Ahmedabad,
yeah.
and we lived in a joint family. And that was also near Delhi. There was a Delhi Checker side, like a Haveli, where we had what you call this was sort of a house where a Jewish house where the men were important to have big library. So there was this huge. We had a family clinic because all of them were doctors, except my father who decided to be sort of a animal man. So there was all of them were doctors, but in their free time they were all reading.
Okay.
But it was not only English books.
No.
There would be sort of even and well-known writers, poets. Everybody would come to the family courtyard for in those days, excuse me, but for a little drink or a little
Whatever. For the health only, just for the health.
It was important that our family was sort of enveloping, but they also used to visit in that. Yeah. So that is how girls, women were all not in that this thing, but on afternoons, everybody would nap.
Okay.
And that was the time I'd sneak into the library. And at the age of 7, I started reading. So till now. And then I would pick up a lot of books and read. So my first was very interesting. 2 books. One is Rabindranath Tagore, which I understood. And once I picked up Alexander Dumas, which I didn't understand. So they said, "What are you doing with?" I mean, my cousin, older cousin, said, "What the hell did you put it away? It's not for you." I said, "Okay." So then eventually, if you ask me, then I was after schooling, I was studying in Baroda. So between Baroda and Ahmedabad, there were strict trains. And at that point, there was a Wheeler and Company.
Okay.
They were cheap books.
In the
EHV lab, the railway station.
Steel,
I think it's still there, right?
It's still there.
It's still there.
In
So
many
And you could even read the book and return it to him.
Yeah. So I said, "This is wonderful." So every time before I bought my ticket and went in, the first thing I did was to buy a book.
Books.
And that's how I now already have a very big collection. Mine, this one that I'm going to talk about is pretty tattered.
If you have the book,
Things-
you can try it.
Yeah.
It's tattered.
Doesn't matter.
That means it's love.
Yeah.
Exactly. Wonderful.
Oh, okay.
It is.
Which book is it?
It's the strange case of Billy Biswas. It's Arun Joshi.
Okay.
He's not a great cover according to me because I like to design my own covers for my own books. So that sort of thing.
Wow.
So Arun Joshi was not a name that like R.K. Narayan or things like that. He was sort of in some sort of industrial house as a manager or something.
Okay.
He studied abroad and then he came to Delhi. He was living in Delhi. And then he wrote this book and I was totally the first paragraph hit me. I must have been only 16 and a half, 17.
Okay.
That's around that time. And I thought this is amazing. And it's all about an IAS officer who is very high up and he's also studied abroad and all, and he's in the Delhi circuit of nowadays we talk about smart cities. So in in that time, there was always a smart circle of IAS officers who would get together for and talk on big subjects, intellectual subjects. So this man who was already going to become a very big officer eventually in India, suddenly disappears.
Okay.
So that's the strange case in this was which really got me.
Wow.
And everybody and the family, it was an ego issue because he belonged to a very, very well-known family. And how does this highly educated man disappear, an IAS officer like that disappear? So there's a hunt for him, and they find him. This is just a general thing, which I'm talking about something else eventually.
Yeah.
In the interior of Madhya Pradesh, in a travel group, where because he has knowledge of medicine and astronomy, he becomes a sort of a guru. He leaves all his fancy, smart life
And designation.
and he starts living there, and you can't even recognize, when they find him, they can't even recognize as the same Delhi. But this is all about freedom. That basically this can be very suffocating and constructive, this can suffocate you, the sort of social life that you have to lead in a certain profession. And that's what he was experiencing. And I thought in those days to write a book like that was really amazing. So that it's all about freedom and realizing yourself, understanding yourself, who you are and how do you want to live. And I thought the sense of freedom touched me at that point.
True.
And that's why and he eventually, when they do find him, there's a very tragic end.
Okay.
But try to find out.
I think we got to read this book.
Yeah. And she's carrying it.
Yeah,
Yes.
she's carrying it.
He has written very few books. But I sometimes feel that sometimes we glorify a lot of big names. But sometimes, as I already
The lesser known
told you,
writers.
as we talk like, there are smaller things
Yeah.
with very big themes. And
Yes, yes.
I've always felt that it was enchanting.
Very interesting. Shalvi, you would want to go next?
Are you sure you
Yeah.
don't want to? Do you want to go?
I
Okay,
think
I will go.
Oh yeah.
So, Janu, thank you so much for inviting me. I wish all the readers and writers a very happy World Book Day. Since you are asking me to name one book and discuss about it, in fact, I have been a learner throughout the life, and I have been learning in all phases of my life something or the other from this book or that book. At this certain time, because I'm a self-made man, many times you are confused, you don't know what to do. Then books are the real companion, real advisors. But as of now, if I talk about one book which I usually refer almost every week, almost every day, is Paulo Coelho's the Manual of the Warrior of Light.
Okay.
The Warrior of Light is the person. A warrior is a person who fights the battles, who fights the war.
Yeah.
So if you are in the position where every day you are taking on the work which is unusual, you're going into darkness. Light, warrior of light is something like when you are going into darkness, and darkness of every phase, whether you are dealing with this or dealing with that, or dealing with your emotional part, or your physical part, or your business part, your creative part, your entrepreneurial part. So you find everything there. So in that book, around maybe more than 100, I can't exactly remember the instances there in that book. But any kind of situation you are in darkness, you can go to the Warrior of Light. This book is named as Manual of Warrior of Light. So for all kinds of warriors, you will find some light there. So it's a kind of therapy for me.
Excellent.
Whenever I find any kind of problem, I just you can just keep turning the page, you'll find, oh, I'm dealing with this problem. And this is here, it is written clear-cut solution.
There are books which give us our answers.
Yes, it gives answer. And you relate to yourself, oh, I'm in this kind of situation only. So, particularly dealing with things, this book has helped me a lot in last few years. Every now and then I've been reading about it. And there are many things. I keep having the book sessions almost every week. So I get the books from the authors. I generally buy it through Amazon. I don't, authors say that I'll send it to you. Publishers say that I will send it. I say, I want to support the author. I just buy it through Amazon online. So I read, if I'm not able to read the whole book, I read few things, I read synopses, I read cheese. So I have idea like, and this has become a part of life. It has been since childhood. So if you don't have, in my case, I don't have many friends, but these books will be a good friend. Yeah. Whenever you need anything, you want to be in life
you're in
mode.
dilemma.
Yeah, dilemma. You want to be in the, you want to see something romantic. You can read those novels. If you want to be spiritual, there are the books. You can go to the spirituality. And if you are thinking of something self-help, these books are there. Spirituality, then there is a lot of books
for
about
everything.
Whenever you are fed up with the material kind of things, you want to be more spiritual, going beyond your meta kind of. I mean, you want to go metaphysical. Then these books are available. So books have been real great help. And Janvi, I would say we are very lucky people, those who can read and write. There is a large part of population, particularly in the third world countries or Asian countries, they cannot read, they cannot write. We are very lucky people, those who have this skill. So these books also provide us kind of empathy and compassion for those kind of people. These word book days, we should remember those things also. Probably as of now, this much. Thank you.
No, she was add one. I was just thinking that earlier, much earlier, you're much older, that there used to be on the radio, a lot of storytelling, stories and theatre and drama and all that used to
Oral narratives.
in Hindi and all that. So that used to be, I myself used to also sit and listen. That
Very interesting.
There.
One thing I used to
We now have podcasts.
You podcast.
Yeah.
We have
But then I'm
podcasts.
talking of the simple people.
Right.
वो ऐसे पकड़ के ट्रांजिस्टर सुनते थे.
सुनते थे.
People
Very
used to
interesting,
listen.
yeah, very motivational.
The oral tradition. In fact, if you go back, Dastan Go.
Yeah.
You know, the oral tradition of
Like
storytelling.
Also
Yeah.
the kathakars.
And
That was
those
there.
are long stories.
But
and all those.
these, I remember on the radio, these are well-known writers like Shivani.
One thing I used to hear was
Yes,
Yadav
yes.
guided books by Nilesh Mishra.
It is still coming. He has been coming in.
So all that was very,
very interesting. Very
and that's a good method also.
That's good.
But I think today just our mediums have changed, like
Mediums have changed.
Spotify or through
Spotify,
podcasts.
yeah.
We've got
And you have audiobooks now.
audiobooks.
No, but Joe, the ones who are, what you're talking about is common man.
Right.
So fundamentally, it's the desire to tell a story. So how it eventually is expressed through a cover or now through different
Audio
media,
or through-
but it's fundamentally the desire to tell a story.
Yes, exactly.
And that's so important, but that doesn't diminish.
True.
So maybe the technologies will change, but as long as people still want to
No, but I
share.
think she's right. The new mediums reach a niche,
Yes.
for a niche audience.
That's true. That's true.
It's not for common, it's not for everyone.
Yeah.
Speaking as a young person, sort of maybe the only
Fantastic.
one on the couch. There's I've never listened to a story on the radio because I grew up reading like physical books or like listening to audiobooks or reading ebooks or going on these aggregator websites where I could pirate books as much as I could. I was just like a little word hungry rugrat growing up because I'd read anything I could put my hands on. And at the same time, I used to love teaching as well, especially the underprivileged kids. And I used to do that. And one thing that struck me across every class register, across every medium of storytelling is that people are hungry for stories. And people are hungry to hear things that take them outside of their,
World.
out of their one afternoon of heat and hard work. And it's for them, even if they can read 2 sentences, they prefer to read it themselves, or they prefer to experience the story themselves, as opposed to having someone else narrate it. I'm not saying radios are not a good medium to do that because a lot of villages and less urban populations across the country still use the radio a lot. But I think it's been very segregated into what kind of mediums are used. And even young people these days across all classes, they prefer to sort of not listen to the radio and they prefer to read on their phones.
Yes.
So
Interactive.
Like I've seen little boys, 12, 13-year-old boys who work on their farms but who have smartphones. And they just prefer reading whatever's been, whatever they can access through that little device. So I think that way we've at least put a firm foot into this century in terms of technology and how that interacts with reading and stuff. So yeah.
Shalvi, would you also want to talk about your favorite book?
Sure, my family always wanted me to be an architect growing up. And much to the disappointment of my father, and it's his fault because he was the one who used to take me to bookstores. So, in a way, he kind of made this thing happen. So I decided to study English and writing in college. And then my professor Jim Grimsley, amazing writer, wonderful fellow, I think he opened my eyes to what craft can be, what books can be, what stories can be. And he said, this is your first writing workshop, and I'm going to assign you a book that's going to completely defeat you. And you'll realize you'll never be able to write like this. And then he assigned us 100 Years of Solitude, 100 Años de Soledad by Gabriel, Garcia, Marquez.
Yeah.
And he was right. And for a solid month after reading the book, I couldn't think of anything else. I decided to start watching Spanish films, documentaries. I learned the language. We had to take a foreign language in college as a part of our requirements, general education requirements. And I took Spanish. And then I read the book in Spanish, and then I lost it. And it just destroyed my ability. Because the story is beautiful. It's kind of a circular universe approaching entropy kind of thing. It's a gorgeous, familiar drama. It's a tale for the generations. It's about this spark of life that blooms into a whole town, which kind of comes back to a dead spark of life. And I, having grown up in a big family, like great-grandparents, grandparents, my parents, few siblings, dogs, and whatnot. And it just kind of resonated with me in a way about how human life is just chaos, and all we're living for are the stories that take us through every day. And just like, I don't know how to, I still, having read it, I think about 6 or 7 times now, I still don't have the language to describe what the book does. And I know I'll never be able to write like that, but I think it opened my eyes to just a magical sort of propensity for words to do anything. To the ability of words to do anything for anyone, and no matter who you are, there's a book out there for you. And this one, I think, was mine, unfortunately, or fortunately.
Fortunately.
Yeah.
Very lovely book.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit about
True. Next,
Yeah. Your question made me very reflective yesterday. Very difficult, as you said, to pick one book.
Yes.
And I said, should I call her and say, why not, one book per genre? Because you've read all, from biographies to fiction, non-fiction. But I enjoyed my evening yesterday thinking about all the books at different ages.
And the nostalgia.
Nostalgia. And though you've said one, I'm going to pick one non-fiction and one fiction.
Okay.
Sashi Pandey. I don't know if you've read. She's one of my favorite authors. Because she writes about Indian women, and when I read her short stories, I see a part of me in them. I feel here's somebody who understands me. We live in a patriarchal society, and you were exposed to progressive modern education. You're brought up that way, and then you've got to fit in with your Indian values. So I really enjoyed, and I keep reading her short stories. I recommend them to most youngsters, because we read all genres, but I say read Indian authors too. And the other book, so very difficult, but Prophet by Khalid Gibran. That is one classic, totally. In fact, it's every book that you read, you kind of fall in love. Right now, I'm reading Caste by Isabel Wilkerson. And you think caste is only here, but you trace it back, it's everywhere. So it's difficult, but Prophet is one book, it's like a Bible. And when I was introduced to it, I think it influenced my relationships with my partner, with my friend, with my work, everything, all aspects of life. So I started, in fact, what I would do is I have a library, and then I have a smaller library in my bedroom. And books which I don't want to let go there, because sometimes books don't come back to you. So Profit is a book which I have 2-3 copies. One will be in my bedroom library, and one because people want to borrow, and I'm happy lending, because I think
They don't return.
sharing books. And some friends have said, keep a register. I said, no, a lover of books will return it.
Or maybe not return.
No, see that I'm going to keep your copy. If it's a good friend, you say get yourself another one.
True.
So yeah, this is a book that I really
One
like.
thing I've also experienced is that while reading a book, sometimes you fall in love with a character.
Yes.
And then you're looking for that character maybe in real life. Like for me, that character was Howard Roark.
Oh, Fountainhead. Or John Galt.
So, would you want to talk about any character? Like anyone can go first. Like any character that really fascinated you or like helped you think in a certain way or like was very.
So for me, it was not. Sorry, I'm just chipping in. Growing up, I read the Illustrated Weekly at a time when Kushwant Singh was the editor. And letters to the editor that would be written, and the ones that would really get published. Like I remember in those days he had done an issue on abortion. And one of the readers had written, I wish your mother had done abortion, had gone in for it. And he kind of published it, But you need a lot of courage to be able to laugh at yourself. And so I think
he was
sorry?
very gleefully happy to write.
Happy to publish. And one of the last editorials which TUI didn't publish, and I remember Anand Balzar Patrika published it, and that issue was sold for almost 60 rupees, was because he was moving from Bombay to Delhi, and I've lived in Bombay. And that editorial that he wrote, saying goodbye to the city, was one of the best pieces I've read, really, really very well written.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Any other character that anyone wants to talk about? Like.
In fact, I read a book sometimes back. I can't remember everything about that character, but whatever I remember is very fascinating. It's about Queens of Crime, written by Sushant Singh, actor Sushant Singh and Kulpreet Yadav. They are all the women well-known criminals, and these are the real-life stories, particularly from Mumbai. The lady is a kind of bootlegger. Started selling 1 or 2 bottles here and there for making some money. Slowly she catches the main bootlegger, eliminates him from the way. She becomes the head of that area. She becomes the dawn of that area. Even befriends politicians, then mafias, police officers. One police officer falls in love with her. And he is really in real love, and that lady is not in love, she's just showing that I'm in love. Very, the character which is really rare to find nowadays, but that kind of characters are available.
It reminds me of Gangubai.
Yeah, it's like Gangubai, but Gangubai is a little...
Mafia Queens of Mumbai.
But it's a little simple character, it's not that complicated. She's dealing with only one society. And one kind of people, and there she deals with a lot of people. There are the mafia, then there are another bootleggers, and she wants to become the queen of that area, and she eventually becomes that queen. That is how this is a very inspiring character. Though this is you can say this is not a kind of character which we should emulate, but still. They are.
It was fascinating to read it.
How they survive life and make the most of their lives on their terms.
Yes. She lived her life on her terms.
Any other character that comes
role
across your
models,
mind?
or I'm just trying to think. It's funny now to extract from a book people that we've met in that sense, because you do actually form relations with these people in the journey that they're making. Let me think now.
May I?
Please do.
I took a class when I was doing my master's called Peripheral Writers. So it was about writers who live on the periphery but who are very much into included in the English canon, even though they've been translated. So, so I read 2 books in that class. One was Solivo Magnifique by Shamisu, and then the other was White Sagasso Sea by Jean Rhys. And White Sagasso Sea by Jean Rhys stuck with me because I grew up reading Jane Austen and the Bronte sisters and all of those things. And Jean Rhys is a subversion of Jane Eyre, the book Jane Eyre. And the book is centered around Mrs. Rochester, not Mr. Rochester. It's a story of Mrs. Rochester, the mad woman in the attic. And she's shown to be a half black sort of Jamaican woman who came from the plantations to marry Mr. Rochester. And it's her story. It's about the story of her and her nanny. And it kind of really helped me erase a lot of colonial, I guess, language in my brain. Like it helped me realize how to take ownership of your own stories. And so Mrs. Rochester, and she was a perfect mad woman, you know, in the book. Like she used to, in front of a very stiff upper lip British society, she used to go dancing in circles. I mean, that's just this, it was the rest of them for being scandalized by singing and dancing. And she used to miss her homeland a lot, Jamaica a lot. And then she was like, you know, sort of highbrowed into living in this little world where everyone sort of imposed their own rules on her. And the way she broke out of it, I mean, she went mad, but she did break out of it in her own way. And she did set fire to the house, which was amazing. So that kind of character stayed with me. And Solivo Magnifique is a similar character, French, but from the French colonies in Africa. And the way he broke out of his, the kind of bonds of colonial religion and all of those things.
Wonderful how writers can weave such beautiful characters.
Yeah.
Clearly. Yeah. Gosh.
Why don't you speak something about reading? Because you keep doing a lot of reviews, book reviews, physical book reviews.
I'm sorry,
You should also
catch
speak
up
something.
with you. Janvi, I know for so long now, I have to catch up.
You see your post in social media about book reviews.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
I
she's
used to
done.
do monthly book reviews.
She's done.
Yeah, I mean, I just love listening to authors, learning more about their process, and I think it all started with me being in media and getting that opportunity to sit with an author and, you know, talk about their lives and their work, and that really inspired me to read more, write more. And I really found dearths of, you know, circles where I can actually talk about my experience of the book. And that's why we thought of creating a circle, and that's where, you know, the book review and reading sessions came
Which
up.
one has influenced you? Or rather,
I think
you
Avid
found
is my
the best?
favorite author, and I think that just reading her has really influenced the way I think. I think I have become, one thing that books have done to me is like made me more empathetic towards people and made me understand that their story can be very different than mine, and that's completely alright.
To be generous enough for that.
Yeah, empathy is like one thing. Is there anything else that, you know, you would want?
I would like to say one more thing. Like when you read a book, I mean, reading book makes me a more complete person. Like I was talking about your Bombay Brides. If you have been brought up in a uni-dimensional societies, living in same kind of life, probably you will not have the cultural connections. You will not come to know what is happening around the world.
In the Manoji community.
Yeah, if you read the books, because of the characters, because of the places there, because of the settings, you can come to know different places. That, as you said, you can be more empathetic.
It's a window to the world, and window to people.
So, of course, there's a challenge there with translations, and you obviously experienced that. And I think you must have had a wonderful insight into the original and the translated. So we're obviously all
It's very important.
and yet the sensitivity of a translator to reveal things that even perhaps the author couldn't. So it's a highly complex construct, actually.
And to be able to read it in both languages.
Yes.
I think that must have been wonderful.
It was difficult but wonderful. It was, yes. And
you're able to appreciate the nuances.
Exactly, and I think Edith Grossman did a wonderful job. I mean, I don't think I could have even begun to translate the first word of that of the book. But yeah.
Then in time you become you create your own translation because
Right.
that's what you get from the original,
Right.
that's what you get from the translation.
Translators.
And then
you're
you're saying-
processing it.
Yeah.
Yes, and maybe actually, no, would I have said it that way? So it's a lovely depth.
I was very happy to learn that Tu Mufsan was nominated for the Booker. It's the first Indian translated book to be nominated for the International Booker.
Okay.
And Daisy Rockwell, I think, translated that one. And I haven't read that in Hindi, but now I'm thinking if I should, because I read very slowly in Hindi, very slowly. I did learn the language in school, but it's very difficult to, because I'm used to reading like whiz past pages, and it's very difficult for me to focus on every word. And but I think I love that local languages, local cultures, and they're getting international recognition.
True.
And so funny thing is, when they get international recognition is when they get
When local people start valuing it.
start
Yes, yes.
valuing it, because
That's
otherwise
also
they
good.
don't.
It's validation.
Yeah. Which, I mean, it shouldn't be that way, but
It
that's
shouldn't be.
but that's the way it is. Yeah.
And I really want to understand, like, has reading also inspired you that, your story is also important and needs to be told? Like, has reading inspired you to be writers? Like, has it?
Yeah.
I would want to know your good impression.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's very difficult to be a writer. It's a very lonely, how to say, space where you are with yourself.
Yeah.
And it's hours and hours and hours
Maybe writing or not
Sometimes
writing anything.
writing. And then there is, you can't get out of it, and you have to force yourself to leave it.
A lot of discipline.
And yes, you have to be very disciplined.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you can't write a book. And then you know that it's bothering you, and you're getting deep into the story and the
Universe.
characters that's affecting you. So you know, every day I make it a point, like for me, I'm talking
Yeah.
about myself, that between a certain period in the evening, I do get out of the house to take a chakkar and come back.
Mind fresh.
One thing, ma'am,
But these characters, they every time I finish a novel, I feel they are with me in my house, around me, and we are one family, and we are all the time. And then suddenly the book goes into with the publisher, and then everybody is gone. And that's the hardest part, because you want them. I mean, they become part of your
Yeah, they will
life,
people very
your
personal
existence.
to you.
Like even when I'm sleeping, sort of I'm saying, okay, this one is going to say this, and this one is going to do this, and then once it goes into publishing and the book arrives, there's no one. So that's what you call a loss and a gain.
Yes, yes.
Because then eventually people start reading and want to discuss the characters with you.
Right.
So then again they start coming back to you. So I have now, so what I started doing from my first book to my recent book, which is just also won an award, is that I started making it like a family. Okay, I repeat the same characters and the same houses.
Wow.
And normally I place everything in Ahmedabad. Ahmedabad is my stage.
Yeah.
So everybody is in Ahmedabad. So whenever I want, I have to just reach out.
Reach out to
That's
people
how-
in Ahmedabad.
Yes. So I made like a family tree. So some are here, some are there, some are in this
Which
book, some are
perhaps
that book.
relates to
Yeah,
existing
my already
Yeah,
the
so
family which is
the-
no longer with me,
Yeah.
the joint family was there, and then slowly everything disintegrated, and then
And
some
then
are
that
in
comes back.
Israel, and some are in Canada, and some are here, and some are there, and then I put them all together in the book, and that becomes
Yeah.
a whole, and then suddenly they're there and they're not there.
So, one important thing that you said was also about discipline, which is required in writing.
Yes,
Like
important.
most people say that it's a very creative profession, so you might write if there is, mood hai to likhenge. Aisa. That's not how it happens.
I have a full 8 to 10 hours, sometimes 12 hours.
Of sitting in.
Great commitment.
And sometimes I just take something to a cafe. That's
Right.
I remember Swati was your place, right?
Swati, and now
Oh,
it's
I love
Swati. Both Swati and
Yeah, that's where we can find them.
For me, it's
Otherwise,
been the Gufa Wala Zen
Gufa,
Cafe.
yeah. But I sit a little away from it.
Oh yeah. It's a beautiful
And then-
space to write.
Yeah, very nice. So then I just have to do a little of that. So what do you say, breathe?
Yeah.
breathe.
Well, the mind has to get fresh.
Breathe, yeah. And then also you have to find, when you meet, as you're saying, about people and places and houses.
Yeah.
Every time I go somewhere or meet somebody, also make a lot of drawings, sketch. I have sketches always. So I make sketches of the people that interest me, or I make notes. Sometimes I can also take photographs. So that's
It's a mix
for my
of all
last
creative
book
things.
now. When I Appetite, the cuisine of Indian Jews. For that,
I forgot to get my copy. I wanted you to sign it, but it.
so that I had to photograph a lot.
Okay.
So in the process, I took to photography, sketching and photography. I do both and write notes.
True.
But suddenly I keep next to my bed the books I want to read and a lot of sheets of paper and pens. So suddenly I get a phrase, and if I don't write it at that very moment, I get up and don't write it, it's gone.
Yeah.
By next morning, I'm saying, what was it? What was it? So then I say it's better to
Yeah.
just note it down, so it's there.
Also, I want to know that everyone talks about reading a book, but rarely we talk about like unfinished books. Like there are books which we
there's so
read
many.
halfway, and then maybe we like it, we don't like it, but then there is this pressure of reading the book. How do you deal with that? Or like, is it advisable to leave it?
You
Read
tell,
it?
obviously you've got.
I'm the youngest person here, and I'll say life's too short to read books you don't like. There's like thousands of books out there that you can just like pick up again. And
But I know after years, sometimes you go back.
yeah.
Yeah, that's the wonderful. Your mood changes. Your points of
everything
reference change.
Sometimes you go back or just leave it in there, you never read it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but that's so one is it's a
But I
continuum.
was thinking about characters, what you were saying. For me, Orhan Pamuk and Gabriel Garcia Marquez, they run parallel in my brain.
Okay.
Because what happens somewhere, all the characters are they. Both of them.
Wow.
And they all have one house.
Yeah.
And that house keeps coming. That's the
Because you
one thing.
visualized it.
Yes. And that's why Orhan then made that Museum of Innocence,
Yeah.
the installation.
And also what about the
it's,
title?
It just interests me a lot.
True.
And I understand that way. And when I write about Indian Jews, I also sometimes read about Israeli authors just to understand, because the whole focus is different. We don't have the focus of what, say, Amazon's or David Grossman has. I mean, the whole focus is different of Indian Jews. And Indian Jews, the genre is now beginning.
Okay.
Oh. Yeah, it was always foreign, sort of
But now
Jews
we are-
from abroad.
But now Indian Jews are also
Slowly, it's becoming.
I think
Putting
Gujarat.
the Indian element.
Yeah, I think Gujarat took a big chunk of 5,000 of of them, and then I'm happy to see it's coming out.
Yes.
Yeah.
Ma'am, can I ask a question? I have one question. Like we were talking about reading and writing. So, since you say that you keep writing sometimes 8 hours a day,
More.
and maybe more than that. So, is it and read also? So, which one is more spiritually relaxing, reading or writing? Because while you read, you probably go into the characters. You try to find yourself with some character. And then start thinking, oh, this is probably happening to me itself, and you get disturbed sometimes. Similarly, when you write, then again you are creating your own characters.
So what is more?
Since then again you are in trouble sometimes. You think, I should not have written like this. I should have portrayed this character like this. Which one is more relaxing after writing, reading or
For
writing?
me, writing, once
Like catharsis,
I'm
maybe.
on the laptop, something happens. It starts
Flowing.
coming. And it doesn't disturb me at all.
Okay.
The only thing is disturbing is that I have to stop at some point. But that keeps going. It's where it comes
Were
to
you
read,
always like that, or when you started writing at the very beginning of your career?
it was difficult.
Yeah.
First, the Wall City
Yes.
was that way.
Yes.
But after that, it just
Spiritual experience.
It just
Trying to get
happens.
there, yeah.
And I know it that it's there.
Wow.
But when it comes to reading, as you're saying, there are some characters which do bother me, disturb me,
Yeah.
and then I am not so relaxed as I was as relaxed while writing.
Exactly.
To me, that happens after I read Murakami. Like
When you say
sometimes
Murakami has that.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Murakami can do that.
Yeah.
But he is an artist.
Yeah, he's a
The
Yeah.
way he writes about food, the way he writes about interiors,
Everything. Yeah.
clothes, everything
Yes,
is
the consideration.
It's detailing.
like an architect also, almost like a chef or an architect or a clothes designer. I mean, he takes
Very creative.
so many roles, but he's very disturbed.
Yeah, he's disturbing.
That last book, where that
I love the
goes
Men Without
down
Women.
to the
Yeah.
Oh, it
I haven't read
really-
any Murakami
that-
at a Norwegian word.
That
because-
really disturbed me for a full month. You're right, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there are ways of reading as well, and what goes in sometimes or what doesn't go in. So, so you talk about writing, but in the context of now we're talking about reading. I think that's something worth considering. Where what kind of an intention are you reading? What is also in the back of your mind? What it's not passive. Reading is
It's very
dynamic
interactive.
and interactive, and and then sometimes it's nice to skim across something. Sometimes you're going, you just want just to get the thing, and then sometimes you go right in, and it's a whole other experience. So
So what's alive in you at that moment?
Yeah.
I think you're
Which phase you are in
Yeah,
is also very
that's
important.
what.
But again, we cannot be that professional. I don't watch many movies, very popular movies.
yes, yes.
Why I don't watch? People say, why don't you go and watch this movie? I cannot watch that movie because then that will disturb me for years together. Maybe before life. Why did I watch this movie?
Okay.
Certain movie, because cannot be that professional in watching and reading.
Yes, yes.
If you read it, if you don't involve it, then you're not doing it.
Yes.
Then you're not watching it
That's
properly.
right. That's right. Yeah.
So that is how, if you're, I mean, particularly for me,
Well, that's
I read
obviously
very
your-
carefully.
I'm sure.
I choose the books, I choose the movies.
And then only you get into that.
Yeah, otherwise that characters, as you said, they keep on disturbing me.
But that's
how the person, I mean, how they have been created and how good or bad these are. And sometimes, creative people, they have got their own ideology, they have got their own way of thinking, way of life. They try to put it that way only. And very strongly. You may not agree with those things,
Of
but
course, well,
still you have
that's-
to watch those things, and that can put a kind of spotlight on your mind. It can disturb you. Like how people are promoting their ideas, are propagating their ideologies.
That's
And
that's,
that
Very
too in a very
strong
subtle
person.
way.
that's
Yeah.
what it is.
So that is why we
That's
I'm
where your
very careful.
discernment will come.
Yeah, very
Enjoyment.
careful in watching
Yeah.
anything.
But where opposite to what you're saying, I relax. I choose my films very carefully. I know exactly. I don't want to get disturbed. But for me, relaxation is cinema.
For me too.
Okay.
I have to see a good film, and
But you can watch any movie.
No.
We're very choosy about choosing.
I go through the whole everything.
But
You
the
read the
film
reviews,
which
you
is
everything.
based on a book, I will first read the book. A film which is based on a book. I was very disappointed when I saw Eat, Pray, Love. Because the book, it cannot showcase what the book
No,
does.
these things are
Yeah.
very difficult
Yeah.
between
The journey,
book
the internal
and
journey.
cinema. Like say Godfather.
Yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
another debate, with books
Yeah.
or
Sometimes
cinema.
Yeah.
You see,
But then there was
see,
this film, The
see
Boy
a film,
in Striped
and
Pajamas.
you want to buy
I
it.
read the book.
I've read,
What's
watched
the
the movie.
most disappointing is
I have it.
Okay.
Mistress of
I
Justice.
read the book
Really?
years back.
Okay.
And then I stumbled on the film.
There's a
The film was
graphic.
very disturbing. Most World
No,
War.
that is the most difficult. Cinema, based
Cinema
on
or books.
Yeah, most
Expectations.
difficult. Either you read the book or
Yeah. I
see
don't
the
think-
film.
Yeah.
But if you see the film, don't read the book.
Yes.
If you read
I
the
like
book,
to
don't see the
do.
film.
I like to read the book and then watch
The
the
only
film.
film I felt was
Because you are a reviewer.
Yeah.
It was Godfather.
Godfather. But even
That
the boy
was-
in striped pajamas,
Yeah.
based on the World War.
Yeah, my God, but it was.
Distorted.
Yeah, it was very
Yes,
disturbing.
disturbed.
Very disturbing. In fact, most war films or books, so many of Daphne du Maurier's.
Oh, Rebecca.
Yeah.
Yeah, the classic. I think
Not
the
just
film
Rebecca,
adaptation. Yeah.
most of her books,
yeah.
post-Vietnam War, and what happens to soldiers when they come back home, and the families, what has happened to them.
It is like one
I go by feel good films.
good films, yeah, sorted.
Hmm.
So, is there any phrase, any anecdote, any quote from the book which has really stayed with you, no matter when you read the book? Like anyone you want to?
Oh, I think
Oh,
I
for
remember
me-
one that's pertinent to our conversation. I think Jorge Luis Borges said, "Paradise must be some kind of library."
Wow.
And ironically, I have that engraved on my iPad. And but I mean, it's always stayed with me.
No, it will stay with us as well.
Yeah.
For me, it's Marquez again, where there is this man, every time he enters the room, there is a whole flow of yellow butterflies following him. So I can remember. Somehow it stays with me. I think it's so beautiful.
Okay.
This man enters and there's this whole
Yellow
stream
butterflies.
of yellow butterflies following him. I said, okay, this
It's
is
gorgeous.
poetry, painting, everything.
It's all in one. Yeah, that's lovely.
I did somewhere, I don't know from which book or who has written. This is very common, but we should know this. Like as exercise is to the body, similarly reading is to the brain, right?
Yeah.
Exercise is to the body. Analogy is something like
Yes.
exercise is to body and reading is to brain. Similar, both are the similar things. We should do exercising for the body and reading for the brain. And similarly about brain, I again read somewhere. If you don't use it, you lose it.
Exactly.
Right? The brain has to be used, otherwise you will lose it.
That's it. Yeah.
And it can be either you use it or you will lose it. And you can use it in the best way by reading.
You were asking about a line that has stuck.
Line.
The last one from Gone with the Wind, Scarlett O'Hara says tomorrow's another day. That's kind of stayed with me.
But you know what you're asking about writing? For me, I'll tell you. The only time I'm what you said, brainless. When I go to the old city.
Okay.
I am totally like this.
You get your inspiration
and totally free, a sense of freedom. I talk to everybody and everybody calls me auntie this, that, and they offer me a cup of chai, and I'm totally brainless, headless, just walking. I have my own this thing. So it's not such an easy walk, but it's the best walk.
So that's
You have to be careful not to be hit, that's all.
Small matter.
But for me, the love, the affection, the friendliness,
Familiar.
I stopped thinking, but I have to do that, otherwise it's difficult between reading and writing. So that's the moment. Unfortunately, that I have not been able to do for the last 3 years.
True. And lastly, like as it is World Book Day, any one wish or any one thought that you would want to share around books for our viewers? Like anything.
If I start with, I would say everybody should be a reader and some people should be a writer.
Some.
Like if you have read enough and you think that I can write it now.
Contribute.
I can contribute as my own way of expressions, then you become a writer.
Yeah.
But at
Keep
least
reading.
everybody, keep reading. Everybody should be a reader.
Yeah.
Because reading has a lot of things to do, as we discussed, a lot of things. Brain, mind, empathy, compassion. It's a bibliotherapy rather. There's a word bibliotherapy. Reading is called a bibliotherapy. Yeah, therapy. It's a therapy. You can, in fact, many times I have found that when I'm in distress, a kind of disturbing situation, I just carry some books from my office, a small library in office. I carry the books and I read it in night. I feel so calm, so relaxing. I just go into different world. As you say, when you go to old city, you just lost you. After reading that, all the worries get vanished. So that is how the magic of reading is.
Reading. True.
I would say that if you have books as friends, you can never be bored.
Yeah. Or never be alone.
Never be alone, never
Yeah.
be bored. It's a window to the world.
I have nothing. Just read, please.
Yeah.
Especially people my age and younger, please. read.
Yes.
Yes.
That's-
Online, offline.
Yes. Anyhow.
So I
No,
suppose
but the smell of the book.
Yeah.
I mean, I use the Kindle when I travel,
Yeah.
but I prefer the physical copy of the book.
so when I
And
think
I
that-
would love to support writers by buying books.
That's true. They have to earn a living. But I
Yeah.
think the point is to not be inhibited by
Right.
the fact that it was a book it now can be any other form of technology.
True.
So, and the same way I
Like
would endorse,
audiobooks.
keep seeking those connections, and whether it is for company, for knowledge, for wisdom, for pleasure,
Whatever your reasons
whatever
are.
your agendas are, but don't stop.
Don't stop.
For I am a little, old fashioned books. I still think that good, during these 3 years we could all, a lot of people were on this and all that, but I think it's good to buy books.
Absolutely.
Pages.
I'm with you. I'm
and
with you.
Sort of you feel the fragrance.
Yeah.
It's in holding your hand. Sometimes I choose a book according to the size of it when I'm resting,
Lying
and it's like correct. To think of the geometry of
the book.
It's the correct way of holding it, but to feel it.
To feel it, yeah.
To feel it, to
Touch,
smell
feel,
it. Smell.
And read it. And continue. So,
Maybe
You know how people look up restaurants when they go to travel? I look up independent bookstores
exactly.
and libraries and all of those things.
Yeah.
No, I get it. I need to hold it.
Yeah. You need to know.
Okay, no matter what
In fact, when I visit countries and cities, I always a day is spent in just bookstores.
Yeah.
Mm.
be exploring different cultures.
Yes,
yeah.
yes. And what is it that they stock, and how is it
Yes,
picking
that's
up? Yeah.
much.
Mm.
And the latest,
Yeah.
what's happening,
Mm.
who's writing what, who's
Yeah.
important.
Maybe there's so many authors. so
I've
many
actually
things that-
bought books from Scotland. I've picked up such rare books.
Wow.
And Bangalore.
Yeah.
Bangalore has the best collection of second-hand books.
Oh.
Yeah, Bangalore City. Yes, they have an amazing collection. Books which you normally don't find in bookstores, you'll find.
You'll
them.
find
Fantastic.
Yes.
That's great.
Yeah.
So,
Very nice.
Maybe that's the next stop on.
Yes.
Nice.
And Strand every year in Jan in Bombay, they have a book sale.
Mm.
And it is very heartening. At Churchgate, you have this Sundarabai Hall, which is huge, and the sale is on for a month, and you'll find it packed all the time. It is heartening, there's
Kolkata Book Fair as well.
Yeah, Kolkata Book
Yeah,
Fair
yeah,
too.
yeah.
It's heartening to know that there are still readers.
I have one question. You work with children, you said.
I used to.
Used to.
Yeah.
A lot of parents, I had a tendency, I have this, my father's woman, that small little book by Rupa which I gift.
Ah,
All
Papai.
No, mine
Rupa.
is Rupa Publishers.
Okay, Rupa
So
Publishers.
it's like in my father's will. So I had a tendency to give anybody who came to my house with a child. So they would tell me in advance, auntie, you don't. Just one question, why?
Mm.
You know what? I also don't know why. आपको पता है? Do you know? They said they will not read. They are now hooked on.
Their phones.
I mean, it's kind of true.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So let's say that. Let's end on that note. That
Yeah.
please read.
Please read. No matter what your reasons are, no matter what the medium is, just read.
Read.
And thank you so much, everyone, for sharing your side of the story and sharing about your favorite books. I think now, me, our readers, viewers, everyone has some books, that they will pick up after maybe watching this session. So yeah, thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Janvi. It was lovely.
Thank you, Janvi.
And for more such interviews, for more such interactions, keep watching Vibes of India. Thank you.